Carl.
Carl! 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 Carl!
Walt!
Carl.
Carl!
Walt!
Carl! Walt!
Carl!
Carl.
Walt!
Carl!
Walt!
Carl!
Walt!
Carl!
Walt!
Carl!
Walt!
Carl.
Carl!
Where's Walt? Walt stays with me.
Carl!
Walt!
Carl.
Walt!
Carl!
Walt!
Carl's.
Walt!
Carl.
Walt!
Carl!
Walt!
Carl!
Walt!
Carl!
I'm not going back without
Carl!
Walt!
Carl!
Walt!
Carl!
I'm coming for Walt!
Carl.
Walt!
Carl.
Walt!
Carl!
Carl! Walt!
Carl!
Walt!
Carl!
Walt!
Carl!
Walt!
Carl!
Don't you ever say his name again!
Carl.
I'm his father.
Carl!
Letting you near my boy!
Carl!
My son.
Carl!
Stay away from my son.
Carl.
I'm gonna get back my son.
Carl!
They took my son!
Carl.
Where's my boy?
Carl!
They took my son!
Carl!
Where the hell is my son?
Carl!
Son!
Carl!
You're not taking my son.
Carl!
Carl.
You see my son?
Carl's.
Not taking my son.
Carl.
I'm getting my son back! Carl!
Get you with my son again, I'll kill you.
Carl.
Carl!
Carl. Carl.
Carl!
Carl.
Carl! 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 Carl!
Carl! Carl!
Carl! Carl! Carl!
Carl.
Carl!
Carl!
Carl. Carl.
Carl! Carl!
Carl!
Carl!
Carl!
Carl.
Carl!
Carl.
Carl!
Carl. Carl.
Carl!
Carl.
Carl!
Carl. Carl.
Carl!
Carl! Carl!
Carl!
Carl. Carl.
Carl!
Carl!
Carl! Carl!
Carl!
Carl! Carl! Carl! Carl! Where's Carl? Carl! Carl! Carl!